And I think the longest sentence has been given out to the wildlife criminals was, I think, 13 or 14 years in prison. So, yeah, it had changed a lot.
Welcome to Nature's Guardians. I'm Micah Siegel. Each week, I talk with people working to save and help animals around the world. They are nature's guardians, and you can become one too. Today, I'm talking with Quyen Vu from Education for Nature Vietnam. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Micah.
Great to see you. So, before you tell us what's going on in Vietnam, tell us your story.
Well, back in uh, 1990s, late 1990s, when I started to work in wildlife conservation in Vietnam, at that time, the ideas of protecting wildlife and protecting nature was still a new concept, or I would say aliens to many Vietnamese people. So at that time, my colleagues and we started a community-based awareness program around the Cuc Phuong National Park, which is the first national park in Vietnam. Our job was to educate local people, encourage them to protect the parks, not to exploit them, natural resources from the park. And so after we launched the program for 2 years, we got a lot of positive feedback from local communities. The park started to get a lot of reports of wildlife crimes or people logging in the park. And so our programs became the model for wildlife conservation in Vietnam.
Tell us about the Vietnamese people. Do they care about wildlife or do they just eat them?
Well, Vietnam has changed a lot. Now there's a lot of Vietnamese people start caring about nature and wildlife. But it wasn't like that in the past when we started the organization back in 2000. So only few people could connect themselves with nature and wildlife. But now there's a lot of young people start to involve in protecting nature and wildlife. And a lot of them have become volunteers for ENV. They help us to monitor crimes around the countries and also to educate other people not to consume wildlife. And unfortunately, a lot of Vietnamese people, especially older generation, still believe in traditional medicine made from wildlife. For example, a lot of people still believe that if you consume traditional medicine made from tiger bone, would it would make them, as strong as tiger. So that we still have to educate people about the fact that, hey, it's just a myth. Western medicine, if they get sick, they need to seek doctor's help, not to turn to tiger bone glue or other traditional medicines that are made from wildlife.
So, what projects have you done?
We educate Vietnamese people about the importance of protecting nature and wildlife and encourage them not to consume wildlife and report wildlife crimes to local authorities or to ENV Wildlife Crime Hotline. And we also work closely. We have wildlife crimes units. We have about 8 staff, and they work closely with law enforcement and members of public every single day to address wildlife crimes. We have, like I said, we have a hotline, so we get about 8 to 10 new cases a day. And after our staff get information from members of public, they would work with authorities to address those reported crimes. And we also help provide support to police about legal background, what to do with this case, or, placement of animals to rescue centers. On top of that, we also work with the government to strengthen wildlife protection laws in Vietnam. And so in 2005, the government discovered more than 4,300 bears in the captivities, which was kept to meet the demand for bear bites in Vietnam. And at that time, the government said, hey, we could not uh, rescue all of these bears in the captivity at the same time. And so we have been working with the government, and since then we have been able to reduce the number of bears right now to just a little bit more than 200 bears left in the captivities. So the measure we've been using is to prevent new bears coming into the farms and also confiscate any unregistered bears discovered at farms. So that's how we deal with it. And of course, if we see any bear crimes relating to like selling bear bites, if big enough, those criminals will be prosecuted. So we use many different measures to focus, to face out bear farming in Vietnam. In 2015, the government changed the penal code, and so the maximum sentence for wildlife criminals was increased from 7 years in prison to 15 years in prison. So now a lot of criminals has been sentenced to jails for 5, 6, 7 years. And I think the longest sentence has been given out to the wildlife criminals was, I think, 14 or 13 or 14 years in prison. So, yeah, it had changed a lot.
Which animals are going to the Vietnamese market and which are going to China, and why?
Some of the species are consumed in Vietnam. For example, tigers, although we don't have, the scientists says the probably up to 5 tigers left in the wild in Vietnam. So not many tigers left in the wild. So most of traded tigers come from neighboring countries like Laos, Cambodia, uh, and consume in Vietnam. So a group of people order tigers and they hire a cook and make tiger bone glue and they consume, or they sell to consumers. And other species consume in Vietnam, like civets, but some species like partial turtles, mostly I would say exported to other countries like China. Vietnamese tend not to eat or consume partial turtles or turtles as traditional medicine or meat.
So, is it true that more of the status symbols and decorations go to China and more of the consumables go to Vietnam?
Very wealthy Vietnamese people consume rhino horns in Vietnam. And because rhino horns is considered as a symbol of wealth, it's like a status symbol. And so these people, they consume rhino horns. Yeah, as I said, for detoxifications, but mostly the number one purpose is to show off the wealth. Um, so rhino horns, even though they're very, very expensive in the past, I think it costs like 50,000 US dollar per kilograms of rhino horns. And I think right now, probably, I would say 30 or 35,000. I'm not so sure per kilogram. So that beyond the reach of, I would say, most Vietnamese people. But they still consume in Vietnam. That means it's a lot of people still have, some people has a lot of money and they don't know what to do. uh, but some other species, like ivory, for example, elephant ivory is consumed in Vietnam mostly for decorations or jewelry. But I would say it's a lot of ivory imported into Vietnam and then exported to China, where it's much higher demand. Pangolin scales, for example, mostly exported to China. A very small amount consumed in Vietnam because of the price in China and other countries are higher than in Vietnam. And the same with hard-shell turtles. So those species are exported to China.
So, what can you tell us about the middlemen who trade the products?
Just give you an example. In 2014, the brother of a major marine total kingpin was arrested. Uh, and law enforcement, police in Vietnam confiscated about 10 metric tons of marine turtles. So it took 2 years, I think more than 2 years, to get this person this person prosecuted. And finally, he got 4 years and a half in prison. And since then, we have been investigating along the coast of Vietnam to learn about marine turtle trafficking. And on the major ports where fishermen provided marine turtle to these guys in the past, now they all gave up. They have given up their illegal businesses. They said it now is too risky for them. Um, I think in 2013, I can't remember exactly, but another major kingpin was sentenced to jail. He was a leader of a rhino horn trafficking network from Africa to Vietnam, and he and his people arrested, and he was sentenced to jail.
Can you tell us anything about corruption?
Well, corruptions in general still a major problem, maybe a major challenge for us in dealing with wildlife criminals in Vietnam. In many cases, for example, criminals try to pay their way out of jail, and in the past, it was a very common, and they mostly probably would be gotten away with the crimes. But now it's much more difficult for them to use money to buy themselves out of jail.
Yeah, what about the elected officials in Vietnam? Are they serious about wildlife crime and ending it?
In each province or each city, there are bad or good government officials. And of course, it's very hard to find good one or good one who want to do something about it. There's a lot of there are a lot of good government officials, but it's very hard to find somebody who really passionate and want to do something about it.
What does ENV do to reduce demand for animal parts?
Uh, we educate uh, we educate people. In the past, we travel around the country to work with universities, local markets, or shopping malls to educate Vietnamese not to consume wildlife. However, these days, a lot of other organizations focus on educating people. So we reduce that area. We mainly just work with TV, national radios, and mass media to encourage the public not to consume wildlife. And we run the volunteer network where we have more than 10,000 Vietnamese, mostly college students, who sign up to be volunteers and help with crime monitoring in their areas and report wildlife crimes in their area.
I'd like to work with you on reducing demand for rhino horns in Vietnam. How can we work with kids to reduce the demand for rhino horn in Vietnam?
Like I said, rhino horns are mostly consumed by very wealthy, small, wealthy group of Vietnamese people. Vietnamese people. So I would suggest you to connect with some of the international schools where a lot of wealthy Vietnamese family send their kids to these schools and engage with them and encourage them to encourage the family members not to consume rhino horns in Vietnam. I think that's the area where you can make a great difference in Vietnam. And I
Getting
think
to
coming from another kid, you know, would be, uh, you know, probably very inspiring them, very inspiring for them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good idea too. We should do that sometime. I'm working on getting a grant so we can go to Vietnam and actually do that sometime.
I, we would really welcome you to come to Vietnam, and we would, try to help put you in touch with some of the schools that we've been working with in Vietnam, and hopefully you would be able to communicate with these kids and encourage these kids, educate their family members and raise awareness of their family member not to consume rhino horns. That would be great. Yeah, we hope to see you soon in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. We're coming. Tell us about animal conservation for the future in Vietnam.
That's a very good question because every day I wake up and I say, we, Vietnam, has made great progress towards protecting wildlife. And we work hard every day in Vietnam, try to address and stop the illegal hunting and trade of wildlife. But every day I wake up and say, do we have time? Some of the species might not be here 10 years from now if there is not enough drastic change, in the next few years. And even though, less people consume wildlife in Vietnam and more people get educated, but there are still demand out there. There are still people out there using wildlife and products made from wildlife. And on top of that, just give you an example, Vietnam has made great progress in dealing with rhino horn demands in Vietnam. And let's say in the next 5 years, we are very successful of dealing with rhino horns plants in Vietnam and reduce the public demands for rhino horns. But there are still other countries like China. China is still a major consumer market for rhino horns. And so if we address problem in Vietnam and our expertise and our experience only limited to Vietnam, we can't work in China. So what about China? What about, in demand in other countries? So we we face a lot of challenges. We have a lot of work to do, and really hope that conservationists and other organizations and other individuals, we become much more effective in dealing with the problems. Other species still exist, 10 years from now. And I'm
Yeah,
afraid
you have to
many
finish it.
species probably not.
Yeah. So if you could have one wish come true, what would it be?
If I have one wish, I would say if human people, especially in consumer countries like, Asian countries like Vietnam, China, or, even I would say to some extent, other countries like US, for example, if we stop, keeping exotic animals and pets, including tiger, exotic bird species as pets, and if we stop consuming wildlife for food and traditional medicine, many of these species would have chance to survive and recover from the brink of extinction. So my only wish is that if we just wake up and stop consuming wildlife.
Let's do that sometime. We're coming to Vietnam. Okay.
Good. Really, I really hope, Michael, I really hope that you would be able to come to Vietnam. That would be, I would say, that would give you a lot of, I would say, you know, uh, in-person experience. you would get to talk to the kids, but also, visit some of the bear farms, tiger or wildlife markets, bird markets. You will see real problems that we're facing in Vietnam,
Mhm.
and then you hopefully you would bring that message home, even educate other American people, not to support, or it's for example, just give you an information. We have a large number of captive tigers in the US right now. I
Yeah.
believe there are like more than 5,000 tigers in captivities in the US.
Hmm.
So US also contribute to the
Yeah.
problems. um
Americans have a thing with big cats. It's weird.
yeah, yeah, so good luck, really, really good luck with your projects, and with what you're trying to do, and let me know if I can be any help.
Thank you so much for talking with me today, Quinn. And thank you for watching. You can help animals by hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. I'll see you next time on Nature's Guardians. Bye.